Captain Imran Khan is poised to take on the top political job in Pakistan as results continue to come in on the Pakistan general election. Former cricketer Imran Khan has claimed victory in a speech where he has spelled out his vision for a new Pakistan. This includes working for the poorest in society, transparency in governance and improving relations with India. His victory speech comes amongst claims of widespread rigging in the Pakistan polls and threats from rival Shahbaz Sharif that the results will not be accepted by his party. So what will Pakistan look like under Prime Minister Imran Khan? What can he change? What will he want to? And what does it mean for India? To speak on this, I'm joined today by a former High Commissioner of India to Pakistan, Sharat Sabharwal. Michael Kugelman joins us today as well. He's Deputy Director of the Asia Programme and Senior Associate for South Asia at the Woodrow Wilson Centre. Lahore-based writer and journalist Ammara Ahmed is speaking with us this evening. And we're also talking to Chris Kay of Bloomberg News, who's joining us from Karachi. Chris, we'll begin with you to just understand why it's taking so long to figure out who has won and what the final numbers are. The Election Commission of Pakistan's website is inaccessible, at least for us here. In India, do we have any idea when we will know what the final numbers are?
Yeah, well, I think the website's inaccessible from India. It's kind of accessible here, and we've seen a few more official results being announced. But really, we kind of expected a lot more of a clearer picture last night, particularly compared to previous elections. Officially, the election commissioners blamed the delay on basically a system fault in its transmission system and said it's been using it for this first time, and it's been heavily criticised for this. Of course, a lot of the two other major political parties, and in fact most of the other political parties other than Imran Khan's party, has criticised the conduct of the election. They've said there's been rigging or irregularities. Polling agents of their parties have been shut outside of the count. They haven't been given the correct forms, that sort of thing. The Imran Khan's main rival party, the Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, has basically rejected the results already. But at the same time, we're not entirely sure when the final result will come out. Unofficial tallies are saying about 50% has been counted already, but really Khan's kind of coming out quite strongly in the lead, and so we might actually see, there's some speculation these rigging allegations may kind of fade into the background because of this kind of more surprisingly strong sort of win for him.
All right, Chris, just another quick point. Looking at the numbers so far, clearly PTI is in the lead. So even with all of these allegations, is it now safe enough to say that the most likely next Prime Minister of Pakistan is Imran Khan?
It would be likely to say. I think you're quite right there. Allegations of rigging in Pakistan's elections aren't new. I mean, Imran Khan himself 5 years ago, protested and cried foul against Nawaz Sharif's landslide himself. So it's really unclear if this will, sort of put a dent in him sort of becoming the next prime minister. He's already made his victory speech. The party's already declared. The election commission has basically kind of discarded the allegations from the other parties as unfounded. Imran Khan himself has said that he will launch a probe into these claims, but again, it's unclear if that would really stop him from becoming prime minister or forming a government.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris. I know you've been up all night tracking those numbers, and thank you so much for joining us with those details. But let's continue the analysis of what all of this means. And I want to start with Michael Kugelman, just to ask you that through his speech, Michael, at least what I noticed, and I could be wrong here, is that he didn't say anything about the military or the role of the military. And that's important, isn't it, considering it was such a big part of the run-up to this election?
Well, yes, I mean, it's not a surprise. I think that he wants to move forward and lay out his plan. I mean, he's assuming he's going to be the next prime minister, which I imagine he will be. And so I think it was actually quite an impressive speech. He hit on a lot of issues. I think what was particularly striking is that he wasn't just continuing to fixate on the corruption issue, which was really what the PTI was pushing on the campaign trail. He was talking about, economic considerations, which is going to be a big challenge for this government. One of its biggest decisions will be how to deal with what appears to be a looming economic crisis. He's always said that, as you know, that the military is not super close to him, that it's not helping him. It didn't help his party, and I think he was wise not to bring that up in this speech. He wanted this to be a very uplifting, non-controversial speech, and I think for the most part he achieved that goal. I think it was a pretty effective speech.
Mr. Ahmed, what's your view? Because you have possibly been seeing the tone and tenor of Imran Khan's campaign speeches all of this time. I've seen and heard some commentary saying that this speech was statesman-like. Do you agree with that?
It is high time that Imran Khan started reconciling and becoming, forming alliances. After all, he has to go to the legislation and lead it. But it seems very difficult because in the past 3-4 years, his, the tenor of his speeches has been very, very aggressive, and people are very deeply offended. And he mentioned personal attacks on him. In fact, he's the one who has made the most personal attacks on people, and he will have a very tough time once he goes to the parliament, something which he hasn't done in the past 5 years. His attendance was very low. And he's not well known for cooperating, and he has the image of being very aggressive and dominating and a bit reckless at times. So it's high time that he started behaving like Democrats too.
Mr. Sabharwal, I want to come to the Indian perspective because Imran Khan had a couple of things to say about India in his victory speech. He said the Indian media has been painting him like a Bollywood villain. He also pointed out the fact that he has traveled a lot across India, of course, because of playing cricket, etc. If India comes one step forward, we will go 2 steps forward. So a marked difference perhaps from his campaign rhetoric. Can we expect him to follow through?
Well, he indeed has a number of friends here. He knows a lot of people here. And it's also, in a sense, to be welcomed that after all these strident statements that he made during the election campaign, he came to a little more sober note and spoke at some length of the need to build a good relationship with India. Unfortunately, I didn't hear anything new in what he said. He made, some points which have been made by Pakistan all along, which is that the two countries have a lot of poverty, a lot of problems. Working together, they can gain, make progress, take their people forward, remove poverty. Yes, trade needs to take place. Trade would be very, very beneficial and so on. But, and that's where he comes to the Kashmir issue. And he seemed to hold there, I felt, the entire gamut of the relationship hostage to the resolution of the Kashmir issue. Now, you get the same sense when you see his party's election manifesto also. He says resolution of the Kashmir issue is one of the core national interests. It's listed amongst the core national interests of Pakistan. It has to be according to UNSC resolution, and then, conflict resolution and security route to cooperation, etc. So what comes out is that there is emphasis on conflict resolution to the exclusion of the cooperative elements of the relationship, such as trade and transit. Now, what he said today was in keeping with that manifesto. Now, our approach all along has been that we should not hold items like trade and people-to-people contacts, cooperation in other areas, hostage, to the fact that there are some complex issues like Kashmir and Siachen and so on, which cannot be resolved. On that, there was no clarity. He would be someone who will be close to the army. I expect him to toe the army line. So let's see if in collaboration with the army, he makes some proposals which can make things move forward. But based on what he said today, I wouldn't be very sanguine until something more comes up.
Michael, would that be a tough ask of whoever would have won this election? It is well known that the military establishment has been a huge driving force directing the relationship between India and Pakistan. There was some commentary that India would perhaps have been more comfortable with Nawaz Sharif because there already has been, a relationship and effort there. Do you think Imran Khan can do anything to move the needle in a relationship which has essentially been in deep freeze for the last 2 years?
No, I'm not particularly optimistic that things will move forward between the two countries anytime soon. I think there's a disconnect in terms of what Imran Khan says about India. On the one hand, he has said multiple times that he wants to have more dialogue and he wants the relationship to improve. But at the same time, he has really been pushing very hard the need to, quote, resolve the Kashmir dispute. And I think that obviously that's something that's not going to be received well by many parties in India. And another factor here, I would actually argue that the domestic political situation there in India, I think looms larger here. My sense is that as India gets closer to having its own election next year, I don't necessarily see the Modi government wanting to extend another olive branch. I know, of course, Modi did extend an olive branch to Nawaz Sharif, and of course things didn't go well. The notion of him trying again with a new Pakistani civilian leader, I think that's just too risky of a thing to do, particularly if it backfires, and particularly as India gets closer to the election. I just can't imagine him taking that type of risk. So I think we need to look maybe after India's election, not after Pakistan's election, when we could really start wondering if maybe the relationship can get back on track.
Oh, that's a fair point. With India's elections coming closer, perhaps it would not be a priority for the Indian government either. Ammara, let me come to you on what the expectations are from this new government, however bitter the final leg has been. It seems like there has been a vote for change. Imran Khan being a relative outsider to Pakistani politics. What are the people of Pakistan hoping that he can deliver?
I think firstly people in Pakistan generally had a grievance against the Sharif family for amassing a lot of wealth and for not seeming to be as people friendly and having policies that are people friendly enough. Although they had mega development projects, they didn't have enough facilities in the health sector, in the education sector, and certain other departments. The public, basically, they're hoping for change and they just want a new person. I was out and about across Lahore in the weeks before the elections, and a lot of people said that we want somebody new, we want to vote for someone fresh. And they really count the fact that he doesn't come from a political family and doesn't have, children to whom he'll pass on the baton. But, most of the things that he has said, it's fairly airy-fairy. Like he wants to improve the health sector, the education sector, and his performance in KP has been fairly questionable. So it's really a matter of question as to how much he can do for the people. And also, when it comes to India, I think he's not in a position to improve ties with India. And I think what he will try to do is to not meddle in the affairs of the army, which is usually the foreign policy and the defense policy and the terrorism and all that, and stick to the health and the education sector and the financial sector as much as he can. But so far, the kind of policies and even there is no proof that he understands the sheer complexity of running the government, and particularly a government in Pakistan. There's no proof of that he has something. And there is also there is no proof that he has the kind of advisors and the kind of team which can lead to a bigger change.
Okay.
Which can please the people, which seems people friendly.
A couple of things that we'd like to understand here, and Mr. Kugelman, if you can help us. We know that not all of the votes have been counted, perhaps just 50% of the votes have been counted. Are we looking at some kind of a coalition government here? If so, would it have any real material impact on how the new government looks? Just trying to draw a parallel to how, coalition governments look in India. Would we see a similar situation in Pakistan, or is it looking likely that Imran Khan will have as much control as he needs to deliver on the promises he's making today?
Well, yes. I mean, there will need to be a coalition. I think that, the conventional wisdom before the election was that, the coalition would be weak and that the winning party wouldn't get nearly enough votes to be able to have a big say on who it has filling out the few remaining seats needed for a coalition. But I think the PTI has surprised based on the results so far. It's expected to capture quite a few seats, even if it doesn't get the 137 that would be needed for a majority. It would get pretty close to that figure. So I think that it could essentially fill out its government with some independents and maybe a few smaller parties. I think you have to worry about a fractious, weak coalition, as many expected, because the PTI wouldn't need to look for many more folks to come in. They would be able to look to some independents and to some others that would be willing to work with it. So I think there will be a coalition, but it'll be a lot stronger, and it'll have much more of a footprint, an imprint of the PTI than many would have expected. So it'll be a pretty strong coalition in that sense. And again, this, I think, goes against what many seem to be suggesting beforehand. Though I guess, then again, if there's anything we can learn these days, it's that, conventional wisdom about elections anywhere, not just in Pakistan, but here and elsewhere, you could oftentimes throw that out the window.
Absolutely. Some interesting parallels perhaps there from what Ammara has explained to us, a population that wants to reject dynasty, look for change, want something new. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. But one point, Mr. Sabharwal, from India's perspective, what can we hope for in the days to come, looking at the kind of political baggage Imran Khan comes with, of wooing extremists, going soft on militant elements? Is that something that would worry India?
Well, I mentioned to you a part of his speech based on which I said that I wasn't very sanguine, and I didn't mention there the element of terrorism, which he didn't touch upon at all. When you talk of resolution of Kashmir and so on, that's something very important to focus on from our point of view, and he was completely silent on that. And what kind of impression do you get when you have the likes of Hafiz Saeed's loyalists and, Tehreek-e-Labbaik, an extremist Barelvi party, putting up candidates essentially to cut into PMLN vote, which helped him. They may not have got any seats, but they definitely served the purpose for which they were put up. Taking all that into account, as I said, I'm not very hopeful. Let's see what he comes up. His weakness is that he is too beholden to the army. But then there is also a strength that whatever he says will be in close coordination with the army. So let's see if he says something more than what he has said today. I would say that we'll have more of the same. More of the same because one constant element, and our Pakistani panelists also said that, is the army, and they control the foreign and security policy, which they will continue to do. They controlled it earlier. The only difference was that Nawaz Sharif resisted them. Excuse me. He tried to wrest control of foreign and security policy from time to time. Excuse me. But the new Prime Minister, Imran Khan, I don't think will be able to do that. One more point which was made earlier about the coalition. I think he won't be, he would be short of maybe 10, 15, 20 seats, which will come from the smaller parties. So there are no problems there. But I don't know, whether it would be a strong coalition in the sense, because if he has these smaller parties, some of which are beholden to the army, helping him to gain majority, then he'll be constantly dependent on the army for his survival, political survival also.
You know, I want to take off on one interesting point Mr. Sabharwal made, and Michael, tell me what you think of this, where if we have a situation where the Prime Minister is not at cross purposes with the military, like we saw with Nawaz Sharif, would it in a sense work to the advantage of Pakistan as well as other countries they're dealing with, if there is some way that the both are working together?
Well, I mean, in a country like Pakistan, which is such a volatile place, you want to ensure that, you eliminate any potential source of instability. And so if civil-military relations stabilize, then that would certainly be a net win for Pakistan and the broader region and the United States and elsewhere. But I think it does raise a very interesting point. It's true that the army in Pakistan prefers to have a pliant civilian leader. And Imran Khan has gone out of his way to praise the army, as you need to do in Pakistan if you want to ascend to the top pinnacle of power as a civilian. But he is a different mold than some of these other civilian leaders are. He is not someone, as I understand from those close to him, not someone that likes to take orders from others. He's very proud. He's very stubborn. And, you wonder that now that he finally, we can assume, has reached his ultimate goal of being prime minister, will he then feel that he could try to push back in ways that he thinks he may differ from the army? But you could also argue that given how much he wants to run the country, he would really be undercutting the opportunity to continue running the country if he were to try to push back against the army, because Nawaz Sharif, of course, learned that the hard way. So, the nature of the relationship between Imran Khan and the army should be a very interesting thing to watch. So I do agree that, yes, on the whole, you want to have a better civil-military relationship. But then again, if you're a proponent of strong civilian democracy and civilian institutions, the optics are not very good of, the civilians just working in lockstep with the army. That's sort of problematic as well. But in Pakistan, the reality of political dynamics is that's basically how it's going to be. The army is going to be the key political power broker for the foreseeable future.
I just want to touch upon one more important point, and I'm going to come to Ammara Ahmed on this, is Imran Khan's statements on Pakistan's relationship with the United States and with China. He has been critical in some parts on both. He has said, if I'm not mistaken, that he wants to also review the financial dealings between China and Pakistan. Do you see that as an important primer of how this relationship develops coming ahead, or would you put it down to campaign rhetoric?
No, I think no, that is campaign rhetoric, and those are the red spots, the red flags that will put him into a bad repo with the army. All the financial, all the CPEC, all the handling of the finances, the loans, everything was done by the army, and they are not going to let him touch those areas. If he touches them, then his government is going to be in trouble. And as far as his government's ties with India are concerned, one important point there is militancy. Will Imran take a stand against militancy, something that he has never done? In fact, he has been very pro-Taliban and very pro these groups which are actually on the blacklist of the internationally they're blacklisted organizations, but he has been accused of giving them money. So he is soft on Taliban, he is soft on terrorism, he has been peddling the narrative that this war which Pakistan was fighting, Pakistanis were getting killed. So all this is just, I think this is just a speech that he has prepared. He doesn't plan to execute any of that in the near future because it will put his government in a lot of trouble. Right. And as far as his policies, the foreign policy, I don't think Imran Khan is touching the foreign policy. And if he wanted to actually improve ties with India, he could have talked about the trade routes with India, something that Mia Nawaz Sharif was working on when the tiff with the establishment began. So how does he tend to improve ties with India? He wants to talk about Kashmir, something that India is not willing to do. He doesn't want to talk about militancy and the trade routes. What plan does he have? He doesn't have much of a plan there.
All right. A lot of political speeches perhaps don't live up to the test of execution. It is not even day zero, I think, of Imran Khan till he officially becomes the next Prime Minister. So I'm sure we'll all wait and watch and see what unfolds. Thank you so much, Ammara Ahmed, Mr. Sabharwal, and of course Michael Kugelman for joining us today.